Hello and welcome to another episode of Who Knew in the Moment, the podcast. Today, I'm honored to have Wayne Mabry with me. His nickname is the Violator, and we're going to find out today a little bit about his story from growing up in the South to becoming a NFL super fan and getting the opportunity to be set up to become a Hall of Fame fan. Not a lot of those, so we're going to get a chat with you today. But Wayne, thanks so much for being on.
Appreciate you having me on, Phil. It'd be my pleasure, man, to chop it up with you for a few.
Absolutely. So Wayne, growing up, you were raised by your grandma in the South, and you loved knights and armor from a very young age. But talk a little bit about just being raised by your grandma and some of the things that she taught you.
Well, my grandmother had a part in it, but my mom was still on the scene, very much so. So I got that mother wit, as we call it in the South, from both sources, even at that small age that I was. And as I grew, my mindset was a little bit different, I guess, than the average kid. Always looked at stuff from an artistic viewpoint and being an artist. So the whole Knights in Armor thing was about just a band of brothers fighting. It was, in my mind, good against evil.
Yeah.
But the whole thing with the armor and the swords, that was majestic to me. So, further along in our tale here, you'll see where all that comes into play. But that was my first passion, was that.
You betcha. Now, one day you happen to be watching a football game and you see on the screen some black and silver, which is attractive to you from a color standpoint. And then it gets maybe a little closer and you're like, I think I see maybe a shield on here. So talk a little bit about that first game and falling in love with a certain team.
Yeah, I was about 12 years old and playing our arch nemesis, as I like to call them, the Kansas City Chiefs. And, there was a ruckus on the field, and, the cameras at that time, they weren't like today's football. They zoomed in on the players, and I'm looking at the shield, and I'm like, that's two swords and a pirate. Fell in love at first sight, man. Already was in love with the colors, but they got a pirate. That's their mascot. I'm all in. So my dream, I didn't say anything right away to anybody, but my dream was how can I get to where those guys are? So in the broadcast, they were saying the Oakland, where's Oakland?
Yeah.
So in the history class, I used to always bring California up. And, it's got some very nice history. So I found out, okay, Oakland is not that far from Los Angeles. So I need to get to Cali so that I can somehow, in my mind, go to those games in person. Because, TV is one thing, but other in person, there's nothing like it.
That's right. That's right. Now, before you moved out to California, you went to school for a couple of years and you got to meet a few future NFL players.
Absolutely. That was a little stint at Jackson State. I was fortunate enough to run into Jackie Slater, Walter Payton, Robert Brazile, Ricky Young, numerous other guys that went pro. But we used to watch them play every Saturday, and it was lights out. When those guys, they were different on campus. When they put that uniform on, they were like the Knights, and they went out there and, let me tell you, took care of business.
Absolutely. Now, those players in their future NFL teams couldn't sway you from the Raiders, though.
That was a hard tug of war for me, but you know what? I wasn't into so much of the bright and flashy colors because that didn't mean war to me.
Yeah.
That silver and black that I'd seen at 12 years old, I was hooked on that.
I love it. So you end up moving out to California and you get a job in the construction world.
That wasn't my first job.
That wasn't the first job. All right.
My first job, if I can share this little layer, was working in a bra factory. Okay. I was a pressman for bras. So, it was a little bit different, but to me, it was money, and it meant that I wasn't on my way back home. That was my dream. Once I got here, I wasn't ever leaving. And so I did whatever I had to do, humble in nature, not too proud to, bend over and pick up a quarter off the floor if I saw it. Hey, it all adds up. So then I was my second job was working at LAX graveyard shift. So I did that, combined the two jobs, just a hustler by nature.
Yeah.
And I got an offer from a job at McDonald's. So I had worked that after graduation from high school. I went to Milwaukee. That was my very first job ever, working at a McDonald's. And it was okay. It was cash money, and that's as a young kid, you just want money in your pocket.
Right.
You didn't really care where it came from. So I got this gig at McDonald's, and after about 6 months there, my mind was just like, this can't get me to where I want to go. So the security guard there, I was having lunch, and he says, "Hey man, you seem like you're tired of this situation." I says, "Yes, I am, and I'm praying for something else to come up."
Yeah.
He gave me just a number and an address. Go down here and talk to these guys. Now, I didn't know who he was talking about. At the same time, I'm thinking, is he trying to hook me up with some long sharks or something?
Yeah.
So I took a day off and went anyway, just on, intuition.
Yeah.
Because you never know what's behind the panels when they open up.
That's
so
right.
I went and had a nice talk, and my father was a construction guy, and I swore to him as a kid, I would never do that.
Mm.
In hindsight, this is what I'm sitting in front of this guy interviewing for a job in construction. So he started naming my pay rate as an apprentice. And I think back that time, it was 1978, I would start off making $311. Now, mind you, now at McDonald's, I was making $190. So that's a big pay raise right
Big
there.
pay
So
raise.
got me a little bit excited. But then when he says, you need to join the union, and I'm thinking, oh, here we go. He's hooking me in with this loan shark deal. So I start to bag away from his desk.
Yeah.
And as I got up, he says, "Son, sit back down." Just in that tone of voice, it's just like, okay, relax.
Yeah.
Goes in his desk drawer, pulls out the big checkbooks that the big executives have, wrote out this check and says, "Give this check to Red Freeman when you go to the union hall." Now I'm nervous as a cat driving over there. That's across town. And I'm thinking, who the hell is Red Freeman? I walk into the union hall. It's quiet, a few guys in and out, but I'm just, who is Red Freeman? So I asked the receptionist. She says, "Go through those double doors." So I go in there. He's sitting at a big long table looking like the Godfather. And I just that was one of those times when your knees just kind of get weak. He looks over his glasses, and I'm thinking, man, this is a straight gangster here, man. He says, "Come on up." So I come up and I give him a check like the other guy told me. He saw the guy's name. Immediately he says, "Welcome to the Brotherhood. Go and get signed up." And I'm thinking, welcome to, just like that, I'm in the union that quick. So that was my existence for 35 plus years. But in the back of my mind was still, I've got to get to Oakland where that team is some kind of way, whether I take the bus or whatever.
Yeah.
Lo and behold, 1982, they moved to LA. I imagine about 10 blocks from where I was living at the time. So I could walk to the stadium. And my very first game, I remember getting the ticket, so excited. I'm like, I don't even want to go in. I just stood at the peristyle inn and just looked at it like, wow, I'm actually here.
Yeah.
I can go in. So, and I went in early, and that's been my ritual, so to speak, ever since. Around 11 o'clock, no matter what we're doing tailgate wise, I'm inside. It's a mental clock in. It's a mental clock in. And when that goes off, it's time to go inside. So, but
now,
anyway.
Now talk about that first game. Who did the Raiders play? And just talk about, getting to see, the first run out on the field and those different things.
You know what, Phil? It's been so many games. I can't even remember who the hell it was, but I'm there. And and the place was pretty raucous. But, as a Coliseum is, it's so huge. It must have been a crowd of, I would just guess 60 plus thousand, but it wasn't full. And at that time, the team was doing good, just coming off, was going on a Super Bowl run, and life was good, man. But it was something about the crowd that always bugged me, and they didn't get up like we did in college and just rock the bleachers.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, man, this is like LA Cool. And I figured when you get to go to a game, you just let all hell.
Right.
So for a few seasons, I would just sit there, I would stand there and, yelling and shouting like I felt everybody else should do. But people were looking at me like, what is wrong with you, man? And this went on for a few years now. Mind you,
Yeah.
this is in the early 80s.
Right.
So about a decade. And then I just got sick of it. And I'm like, you know what? If I don't change something, nothing else will change. So I had this whole deal about a warrior, football warrior / pirate. And that's what I come up with. It was crude at first. It's not refined like today. But like I say, that's 30 years of refinement. And I just came in there, and that's the way I felt, like Rambo or somebody, a Braveheart on game day. So that's how we came into the Coliseum.
Yes. Now, two things I want to ask. One is, right off the bat, was it you by yourself or did you have friends going with you to the games? And then two, I want you to elaborate on that first time you did it. You mentioned a couple of times parents were kind of shooing their kids away. So maybe talk a little bit about those two things.
Absolutely. Yes. It was it was 4 friends of mine. And two of us were co-workers, and we just knew the other 2 guys by proxy, but they were all in. We had our little group called the Enforcers. And, we just figured, hey, they got cheerleaders on the field. We'll be that in the stands.
I love it.
And we never sit down. So that's how that whole tradition goes. We never sit. And people were like, man, we can't see where you should have bought a ticket higher up. Because we're not. And, back then it wasn't like security's going to tell you to come sit down.
Right.
We got a football game.
Yeah, that's right.
And I used to get upset, and I would say, look, you're waiting on the 7th inning stretch. It's right now. Get up. And so out in the parking lot, we walk around the whole Coliseum, and that's a lot of parking lot and a lot of tailgates, getting the crowd fired up. But they would always grab the kids by the hand when they saw us coming. And the kids were like, man, I guess we look like Disney characters walking around.
Right.
Parents are like, no, they look evil. Get away. Stay away from those guys. I'm like, the kids are not bothering us. They're just inquisitive. Hey, how did you guys come up with that look? Where'd you get this? How'd you make that? Typical kids questions, but they're curious. So they don't care if our faces are painted or not. They're looking right through that. So they're looking at the heart.
Yes.
And it took about a good season before they really would let their kids, because the kids would sneak away and just kind of like follow us. So
I love it. Now, you said the 4 of you were called the Enforcers. How was the name the Violator came up? Was that brought up then, or is this later on in life?
No. That was from day one.
Day one. Okay.
Yeah, because that's sort of like my kindred spirit that I didn't know. I didn't know how to put a name on it, but I know he was a little bit different than the guy that you're talking to right now. Matter of fact, he's looking at you right now, but he can't come out. So that whole ritual thing is to release him.
Yeah.
And I have fun with that, because it's like, you hear people talk about, the alter ego. I'm thinking, forget about ego. That's my kindred spirit. That's my other side. And it's been a joy just to share that with people for all these seasons, man.
I love it. Now, as you guys are growing, the Enforcers are growing. Now tell me, did it start with the Pirates Pavilion at the Coliseum, or when was that founded?
Actually, the Pirates Pavilion was there, but we weren't sitting there. We were sitting right behind the bench at that time.
Okay.
And which was the best seat in the house to me.
No doubt.
As things went along, some of the guys dropped off the scene, and I was determined to keep going. And matter of fact, the thing was, I was taking it too serious. I'm like, listen, we're in all black, just like the players. We're representing this team.
Yeah.
So we're what I call ambassadors.
Yes.
I never bought into the whole super fandom thing. I'm just an ambassador. So this is the way I meet and greet. So as a group kind of dwindled, it was just me. So I'm saying, you know what? I'm going to get front row seats. But I think we had like 3rd or 4th row seats behind the bench. I wanted to be closer. So I'm like, I'm going to get right on front row. And nobody's going to ever say about sitting down.
Yeah.
So, And that's how that whole tradition started, man. And we used to rock that pavilion so that the people underneath, there were concession stands under there. They couldn't take orders because they couldn't hear.
I
True
love it.
story.
I love it. So before games, you guys are going around the parking lot. You didn't have your own tailgate. You'd go around to all the other ones and just get the crowd fired up.
Yeah, we didn't need a tailgate. We just park our vehicle, get out and go.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Now, with that, how long would you usually be outside before the game? I know you said, hey, 11 o'clock, I kind of get the, internal ticker going. I got to go in. But before even going into the stadium, how long would you usually be out there getting people fired up?
On an average, it's about 3.5 hours. Yeah, because we're there when they open the gates.
Yeah. So everybody, just to give you context, and we'll have Wayne talk about this, as he started doing the war paint, we'll call it, it really became a process. Week one, it was kind of just throwing something on, like you said, Rambo maybe. But now, and we'll include this in the photo when we release this. Now it's a very fine-tuned thing. I mean, this guy makes Kiss look amateur. But you said that's almost a 2-hour process. So I mean, game days, I mean, it's the day. You're dedicated to that. 2 hours of getting ready, 3.5 hours of getting everyone else ready, an hour before the game, and then the game.
Absolutely. It's just part of the process. And that's why, ritual falls right into it, because that's what it is. And you hate anything that deviate from that ritual. Now, most people say, well, that's kind of superstition. No, it's not. It's the process. And there are no shortcuts to get to that end game. And with me, as far as putting on the war paint, that's a good hour of concentration, because, that was my promise to mom, that I would never quit painting. So I'll just paint on myself.
I love that.
And for years, I think it was about 10 years, she didn't even know it was me.
So you didn't relinquish that. That wasn't something that
I didn't. No, I didn't.
I love it. Well, let me ask you about that. So, moving from Mississippi to California, I'm sure family wasn't super stoked to have you be that far away. Was that met with any, hey, Wayne, maybe don't do that? Or was your family pretty supportive of you heading out to California?
Well, besides thinking I had lost my mind, actually, the whole trip was involved with auditioning for the Gong Show back in that day. Those of you, I'm spotting myself, but anyway, that was my vehicle to get to California, was being in a band. And that was mission one, but the real mission was to find some way to get to Oakland. So after we won the Gong Show and all that good stuff, the band finally dissolved. So I'd already made an oath. Once I crossed California state line, I wasn't going back. So I had a whole different mentality than most of the guys. Now, my mom tried to persuade me at the last hour of leaving to not go. And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
No way. I'm not missing this trip. And she says, well, I don't have any money to send with. I think I had about $27 in my pocket. I'm like, yeah, I got enough to get there. I'll be all right. And never spent a dime of that, long story short. But, when you get focused on a mission, and that's every game to me is a different mission. So it's like starting over, almost a Groundhog Day scenario, but so much fun and enjoyment. I call it therapy, because anything that I've got pinned up during the week comes out on Sunday.
Man, I love that. Now, let's talk a little bit about the Raiders organization, right? So they go to LA, then they go back to Oakland. And in some of the time of California, I think there's a good 30 for 30 on this. You might even be in there. I don't know. I'll have to rewatch it to see if you got featured. But they talk a little bit about, at some point the Raiders get associated with some gang violence, right? And things like that. But talk a little bit about that and just, the time in California and everything that's going on.
It was educational, to say the least. And everybody listened to the news and the media, what they were putting out there. It was so far off center that, the diehard fans understood. Yeah. And you had members of different sets that, took on the color, so to speak. And there is a 30 for 30 about that. But the thing is, we understood that on Sunday, regardless of where you're from, the Coliseum was like neutral territory. And but the whole team getting faulted for incidents that happened outside of the stadium, to me, was absurd.
Right.
And I got mentioned once in one or two articles about being the leader of this. I'm like, no, let's retract that. I'm not
Whoa.
I'm not even a member of a booster club, so to put me in a member of with some gang, no, that's not what I'm about. And didn't believe in the fans even fighting. I mean, why would you come here to get into a fight?
Right.
It's like, to me, it was a waste of money.
Yeah.
To me, it was a waste of money. So there was that. Look, I'm focused on the game. If I got a beef with you, meet me after that.
Yeah.
But during the game, don't even bother me, because I'm laser focused on that opponent across the field.
Yes. Now, how long into being a Raider fan do you start getting a reputation? I mean, obviously, as you start dressing, in the war gear, like we're there, but you really become a centerpiece of the Raiders organization. We're talking about an AFC Championship game in a little bit, but talk a little bit about just gaining some notoriety amongst the fans, but then also inside the organization.
That was great, actually. The first time that they invited me to a post game dinner, I was just like, "What the hell did I do?" I got passed a note by an urchin, and they says that came from the box, meaning Al Davis's box,
Yeah.
and it kind of threw me off my game for a bit, because I'm thinking, why would they send me a note over here? And when I read it, it says, "Be at the Hilton, blah blah address after the game. Take off the paint." I'm thinking, oh, now I've done something to piss them off. So I had one of my neighbors at the game, and he was his mind he says, "Man, what do they want to see you for?" And I'm like, "Hey, I'm going and find out. I'm not going to run home." So,
Yeah.
once I got there, and I ended up using paper towels, if I'm not mistaken. That's the only thing I could find. So you imagine how smeared my face looked, and I really didn't care. I said, "You said take it off. That's the best I could do." So, but they kind of welcomed me. I remember sitting at the table with Al's secretary, Al Locasell, and his family, and all the players were like sitting around them. It was like the knights at the round table kind of a situation. And I'm just like, this is, nobody else sees this setting right here.
Right.
And a few of the players came over and started saying, "Hey, man, you're that guy making all that noise over there." And Howie Long was one of the first ones that came over. And I didn't know how large he was until he's standing over me. And I'm just like, oh my God, man. And real cool cat, he just says, "Look, just keep doing what you're doing. In a few years, the media is going to be eating that up." And, I kind of heard it and say, "Oh, thank you for that positive encouragement." But I'm thinking, he's just telling me something to make me feel good.
Yeah.
Because I'm locked in already, whether he said or anybody else, I'm locked in. So, but they were just saying, we just wanted to see who that was because of all that ruckus in the Pirates Pavilion. That was the first glimpse of the black hole to me.
Yeah.
And like I said, it was so noisy that the attendants underneath were complaining. We can't hear the orders because of those guys stomping up there. I wouldn't let, especially all the youngsters, I would make them get up with me and stomp around. And pretty soon the adults would get involved, and that whole thing was just rocking, man. I just like, this is like it was in college.
Yeah.
And so I mean, that's the best feeling in the world at a game, man, that you can actually affect not only the game but the concession stand with your noise.
That's great. That is great. So with that then, all right, so you start getting some connection there. I want you to highlight what you just talked about though, and that was the idea that with a mission, it didn't matter what other people thought, right? You were there for your goal. It didn't matter what the people in row 5 said about you standing there. It didn't matter what parents were saying about the way you were dressed. Like, you were there for your mission. So talk a little bit about that, not necessarily just in like the scope of the football game and being, the the ambassador, but more so just from a life standpoint. You know, how often do we get sidetracked from what we're trying to do because we're listening to people that are, you know, chirping in our ear?
I call it the outside noise,
Mm,
and it's having vision. And once you have a vision, you're going to get some opposition.
yeah.
And I remember one old guy at the Coliseum told me, you know, when they start to talk about you, you're doing something. That means you're shaking the nest up a little bit.
Yeah.
So I just kind of always remembered that. You know, because I got all kind of, it wasn't a warm welcome for us when we walked in there like that, trust me.
Yeah.
But having that vision, I'm saying, not knowing what's ahead, but I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take this. I'm going to be the best at this. That was the mindset. I'm going to be the best at this.
Yeah.
So you got to bring your A game to knock me off. That was my mindset.
I love that. That's good. So, as the Raiders are transitioning from LA to Oakland, how do we feel about that? I'm sure not everyone's excited.
I was one. I got the news from a fellow friend of mine, and he and I ended up traveling to Oakland together because he woke me up. Matter of fact, I think I was on a night shift or something. So I was in bed. He called me up and he told me that. And I'm thinking, dude, am I asleep? Am I hearing you right? He said, they're gone. I'm like, wait, they were just here. He said, they are gone. So he and I both couldn't hardly function for 2 weeks. Just our brains in a fog. Like, how can a team leave? So when it happened in Oakland, I could relate to those guys because
Right.
I know that feeling. It was like a kick in the gut.
Hmm.
And so he said, I know how you feel about him. You know how I feel about him. Let's travel together. So we became road warriors.
That's awesome. I mean, that even adds more travel or more length to the day, man.
Yes.
Oh,
Well, imagine this. You know, sometimes we would drive up when the money was good, we would fly up. And so we'd get on Southwest fully dressed. And, you know, so the flight attendants thought, man, this is the coolest thing here. Look what so they would have us serving refreshments to everybody from LAX to Oakland. And you know, drinks were on them. And I'm just like, man. So they told the main guy, the owner of Southwest, about us. So we got a letter from him. And we always had that thought that, well, maybe one day they'll put a Raider shield or something on the planes. Now these teams have those kind of logos on their flights. And but they were saying, dude, we've never seen nothing like this. I'm like, why carry a bag when we got everything on we need?
yeah.
So we leave dress and we come back, whatever battered look we had, that's how we got back on the plane.
I love that. Now, I got to ask if you do remember vividly the first time you showed up to the airport like that. I mean, if you got stairs going to the game, I can only imagine going to the airport and walking through the airport. Some of the looks that might have been had.
Yeah, you know, if looks could kill, or if I could get a buck for every look, I would be a billionaire. And we heard every kind of comment there was, but like I said, when you're laser focused and locked in, that's just chatter, and it gets so close to you, and it's like you got a force field around you. It just hits the floor.
Yep. That's so good. So you continue to go to games in Oakland now, and you're still dedicated. The black hole is there, right? Now, are you a part of the black hole or do you have separate tickets?
I had separate tickets. As a matter of fact, my tickets were on the 50-yard line. So I'm on row one, seat one.
Yep.
It don't get any better than that. So
Yeah.
everything that came in and out of the Coliseum, I had a words with it, or vice versa. And so that was a treat. And thank God to the commissioner who thought enough of what I've been doing to make sure I got those seats. Hats off to him. I wrote him a letter. I was that much in shock. Only person I knew to reach out to was somebody in charge, and that was the Coliseum Commission. And he actually wrote back, which shocked me.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Talk about impact. So the Raiders have an AFC Championship game, and you get, I don't know if it's a phone call or if it's a letter, but you get some type of communication with a request. Let's talk about this.
Yeah, it was I would say about 7-ish in the morning, on game day. So I didn't have tickets. So I'm just laying there in bed, getting ready for breakfast, so I can be ready to be in front of the TV for the game. Phone rings. It's Al's secretary. And I'll just say, get your flight and get the hell up here. We've got 2 tickets for you at will call.
Wow.
I'm thinking, so normally if you're gonna fly out for a game, you're at the airport at least about 6:00.
Right.
Because you want to be on that first flight there so that you got all that time to spend in the parking lot. So here it is. I'm thinking, okay, it's 7. Now I got to get dressed. Then I got to drive. And the only place that I could get a flight out of was on John Wayne Airport in Orange County.
Yeah.
Had never flown out of there. Had heard all the stories about, how everything was real stoic there. And I'm just like, okay, well, I got to get to the game. I don't care.
Yeah.
And, this is post 9/11. So when I walked in there in full regalia, the place you could hear pin drop.
Yeah.
And I'm just being quiet because I know how I'm looking. I'm like, these folks have never seen me, so just let me be in stealth mode, so to speak. So I'm just standing there, but the people in front of us kept looking back like, where the hell is he going dressed like that? So we could hear that commotion going all the way up. So one of the security guys came and tapped me on the shoulder, took me up the elevator. That's when it started. Where are they taking him? So and I'm hearing it on his shoulder microphone. If somebody's at the front desk saying, well, I'm not getting on that plane if that person is on that flight with us. So this guy's laughing. He says, man, they put me through a full body cavity search, which was like, okay, this is new.
Yeah.
But whatever you got to do it so I can get on the plane. So they took me and hit me behind the back panel, which is back where all the food and stuff is served.
Yeah.
They said, just stand right here. Don't come out. Stand right there. We'll tell you when to sit down. And they were cracking up. They were like, because these people do not want to board this flight. I'm thinking, wow. So, and I'm just standing there enjoying my morning drinks, on them. And they're just like, okay, now you can sit down. So the main people that were causing the ruckus, I think they were like up in almost in first class, if you call it.
Yeah.
They said, yeah, everybody's on now, you can sit. So I'm like, okay. So that was a fun trip, man. I laughed about that. But when we landed, I'm looking at, watch the clocks on the wall, and I'm thinking, man, we're late. So we get in a rush. We jump on board because that's the most direct, way to get from Oakland Airport to the Coliseum. And so we jumped on BART. We got there, run across the bridge from BART. We're in the stadium now. Don't have time to say hi to anybody. I'm just headed for wheel call. And people probably thought I was rude or whatever. But look, I'm on a mission. I'll talk to you when I see you. And so picked up the tickets. They were still in my same spot. And as we're running down to the seats, the national anthem was playing. Well, I'm so amped up, I'm not stopping now.
Yeah, right.
I just go all the way down. And they were, oh, you made it. Because I had said the week prior that I wasn't going to be there. I knew I didn't have the money at the time.
Yeah.
And so everybody was like, okay, now we're going to have a good time. So we did.
I love it.
And of course, being victorious in that game, I was lucky enough to get the Gatorade bath from one of Tennessee's players.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Now, you just kind of talked about, hey, I'm sure that day people didn't think I was too friendly, but for a lot of people, you became a staple of something that, hey, if I'm going to the Raiders game, I got to find this guy and get a photo with him. And they would continuously do that. So talk about some of those, I don't know if we'll call them like, lifelong relationships, but, relationships that were made that, hey, on Sundays, it was a staple that we were going to see each other.
Bill, I call it fellowship. And we're talking, these people come from all around the world. Some I could even talk with, but they wanted that picture to take back to their village and show them, I've met this guy. And that's when it kind of hit me, the impact. I'm like, wait a minute, people are from around the world. Yeah. They feel like that. So it was kind of like that whole ambassador thing came full force, man. And it was just like, when you're doing it right, other people get that. And that's all you want to do is, that's one of my little slogans, get some on you. Get close enough, I'm going to rub some of this on you. And that passion, you can't manufacture that.
No, I love it. And it's contagious, right? Because there's so few people that are as passionate about anything as you are about Raiders football. And so, it's just fun to be around that. You can just get that feeling from the person. So,
Here's the
yeah.
deal. Not only Raider fans, but the opposing team's fans. That's when you know it's growing.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you that. You got recognized inside Raiders football. I mean, national football, you're known, but like inside Raiders football, is there any other big time fan that you've ever met when they visited, or that you've had the experience to get to connect or chop it up with?
There are several over my years of stomping the yard.
Yeah.
My good friend Barrowman passed away, but very good friend. Let's see who else. The cat from Chicago, Bearman, Bug Nasty from the Tampa Bay. I'm looking forward to meeting him in August. We've never met in person, so that's gonna be off the chain right there.
I love it.
Tennessee Titans ambassador. You see, I can't say super ambassador.
Yeah.
Big Cat. He passed away, but good friend, man. Man, I could go Fireman Ed from the Jets. Just thinking off top of my head.
Yeah.
Big Chief from the Washington team.
Yep.
And just on and on, man. It's some I haven't met yet. The Seahawks ambassador, and of course my guy from the Vikings, man. Yeah,
I love it.
Big
I
Sid.
love it.
Yeah, cool cats, man. We all kind of have that same mentality about what we're doing.
Yeah.
It's bigger than us, and
Right.
it's about that whole family. And you hear us saying in Raider Nation, we're a family. I said, well, we're a global family. Soon as that patch or that shield that attracted me, soon as you see that, it's either a nod or a fist or something, a finger in the air. It's some kind of acknowledgement. I see you.
Yes, that's so good. Now, as we all know, recently it changed from the Oakland Raiders and it turned into the Las Vegas Raiders. So I'm sure, as frustrated and upset you were when it moved from the LA Coliseum to Oakland, equally as frustrated about the fact that moved from Oakland to Las Vegas. Talk about when you found out that news.
Well, here's how it went. We had been hearing rumors, from the inner circle, so to speak, for a good 3 or 4 years. Oh, this is going to be the last season. And after a while, I just stopped listening to it because that takes your focus off the fun that you're going to have for those 3 hours.
Right.
And so I just would hear it and not. But that final year, matter of fact, 2018 was supposed to have been the last season.
Yep.
Well, it rolled over. So here comes 2019, and they didn't really want to say it, but word got out and we knew, okay, that's it. And so we were kind of like heartbroken in 2018, but 2019, that last game, Phil, let me tell you, man, if you ever had a family reunion and you've got relatives that you don't know, but they're kin folks, that's the way it was.
Yeah.
Everybody that had never been there was trying to get there for that game. And even new fans are not just being in there, they've got that memory for life. That place was rocking.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about being a Raiders fan. I mean, there have been times of just pure jubilation because you've been really, really good. Then there's been times of really tough seasons. And I've got a few of my very best friends are diehard Raiders fans, not Wayne status, but diehard fans. And every year, the thing I love about them is they have the most optimism that Derek Carr is going to lead them to the Super Bowl. And by the end of the year, frustration has set in, and the losing season has come again. How do you, as a fan, not get attached to the wins and the losses, but stay excited about, hey, I'm here to support the team, even if we've been going through a series of losses?
To me, Phil, that's the definition of a diehard. like you say, I've seen the highs of the highs and the lows of the lows. And I mean, the lows went on for a minute till we were wondering what was going on. But for everything that goes down, it has to come back up.
I love it.
And the measure of the testament of your fandom, if you will you jump ship and try to get back on? Because it's that term we call bandwagoners. It happens every season.
Yep.
But the ones that never wavered in that loyalty always look at those guys a little bit different. Are you really committed? Like it says, commitment to excellence. Are you committed, or are you just spelling it out?
Yep.
So, when the team goes through stuff, it's us that try to keep that heartbeat going. We always bring our A game, and we're never going to lower that standard ever.
I love it. So you don't have a favorite football player or favorite Raider football player. You always say that. You say, I don't have a favorite football player on this team. There are some I might connect with better, or maybe I've seen more, but I don't have a favorite. But you're getting interviewed, and then you get a knock on the door. So talk a little bit about that story and how it all plays out.
Man, one of the biggest tricks that's been played on me in my adult life. And, I'm doing an interview just like we're doing right now.
Yeah.
But it's a whole camera crew there. And I'm thinking, wow, this is a lot of equipment. And so we going through the interview, and the director, I noticed her keep on her phone. And to me, I'm like, man, that's kind of rude. You on your phone while we're talking.
Right.
But I'm focused on the camera, and I'm like, okay, well, no, but I saw all of that, but didn't know what was happening. That just shows you. So we're in about the middle part of the interview, and a knock at my door. And I'm thinking, one of my neighbors just so curious, they had to come over and see why all these trucks are out there.
Yeah.
And I'm upset. The other guy came out a little bit. And I sit there, I was like, I'm not going. And she's, oh, no, go get it. But just start when you sit back down. So I'm mumbling because I'm mic'd up, so I can't really say what I was thinking. And I go to the door, and when I get up there, I got this stained glass, and I don't see anybody out there. So now I'm real pissed. I'm like, who's playing? So when I open the door, I always spins around from my garage, and I see the gold jacket and that hair. First, I'm like, no way. I'm like, they set me up, and I'm like, everything they had asked me that morning kind of came. I'm like, full circle. I'm like, you would set me up the whole time. And he's laughing too, because he was part of the whole thing while he's driving out here. He says, man, I didn't know you lived so far, but it was an honor for me to come out and give you this nomination. He says, for all that work you've done. So I was like a kid at the candy store, man. And just to have this cat at my house. Yeah. And remember now, he was the first one that said, keep doing what you're doing.
Right.
I'm just like, you can't make that stuff up.
Yeah.
So, he comes through my house, and they've said, man, your house looks like a museum. I'm like, look, well, it's just memories, man. It's you only got one shot through here. So he comes through, and we sit on my patio, and I says, Howie, the only thing missing is a cigar and some bourbon. He kind of laughed at it. I'm like, I know you wouldn't, because we're on camera, but that's tradition. When you sit back here, that's what goes down. So they had he and I go on the side of my house, which they say they were storing equipment. They were setting up a cornhole game.
Yeah.
I've seen cornhole for years. Didn't even blink at it. I'm like, I don't have time to do that. Just pour something in a hole. So I got my cherry popped by Howie playing cornhole. And that competitive nature came out. Even though we're fit, I'm like, I'm going to beat Howie. And, so he says, he invited me to the studios whenever everything is cool. So I'm looking forward to that day, man. And just have some good stories that we can share.
Absolutely. That's phenomenal.
That was a fan's dream, man. I'm just like, to have a player come, and, the other contestants got that same treatment, but I don't know if theirs was as personal as mine.
Right.
Just to have that cat, and I'm this man, a complete gentleman, but he's that night on the field that you wouldn't want to be in front of, man. I'm just like, yeah, so I'm waiting to see him again when we get to Canada.
You bet. Yeah. Well, once again, name of the podcast, Who Knew in the Moment, right? Who knew on your first invite to the Hilton, and how he comes up and says that to you, that, 30 plus years later, he'd get a show up at your house, and you guys would get to connect.
Full circle, Phil, full circle.
Yeah. So what, we had 37 years of season ticket holder and 29 years of consistently putting the war paint on.
Yes, sir. That's it.
That's dedication. So in the house, do you have a wall of fame? Do you have a man cave? Do you have a whole hallway? What does that look like, Wayne?
The whole house looks like a man cave.
I love it.
I've got stuff that I don't even have a place to put it.
That's amazing.
But it's all memories, man. And like I say, you got one shot to do the journey. And as Van Halen said, it ain't a dress rehearsal.
Now, is there any memorabilia? I mean, when you've got more than you could even, show, is there any memorabilia or any items that Wayne has his eye on that he'd really enjoy getting, but doesn't have yet?
Wow, that's a good one. It must be something they haven't made yet.
Okay, noted. Yeah, when we see it, we'll know.
We'll know, because it'll speak to me.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Wayne, the last question I have for you today, and I understand you'll be slightly politically correct just because you are a Raiders loyalty, but is Derek Carr the guy? Is he the guy that's going to be able to lead the team back to the promised land?
Here's the way I'm going to leave you with that one, and we'll close it. All the tools have been provided. The toolbox is full. Now it's up to the worker to go out there and use those tools.
I like it. That's very fair. That's very fair. Well, Wayne, I appreciate the time today. It was so much fun to get to hear your story and all the pivotal moments. And, once again, I know we focused on your enthusiasm for the Raiders, but I think there's a lot of life takeaways, like we talked about, being dedicated to something, being passionate, not wavering on that, just because things aren't going the way you'd like or the way you would have anticipated. So I appreciate you sharing your story, and we'll have to do this again in, 4 or 5 years and see what new stories you've got, and then what additional things the Raiders have done since.
I appreciate that. Like I say, I'll be working on book 2, and this is book 1. The Walk.
The Walk.
Go and get that on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, and Durham's bookstore.
I love it. We will include a link in the notes of this meeting. So I appreciate that.
Appreciate that. A labor of love.
Love it. Well, thanks again so much, Wayne.
Appreciate it, Phil.